Like, where's the line between justice and just going too far, you know?
I know exactly what you mean.
We're talking about this police officer, Kenneth Phillips, got suspended from the force, fought back against it, and get this, he actually won his case
Wow.
against a minister himself.
Oh, that's a story.
It is, right.
Yay.
And I think what makes this so interesting is it's not just about this one officer, right?
No. Oh, no.
It kind of makes you think about how these disciplinary actions, how they can really go sideways sometimes.
Yeah, especially when you've got different news sources like we do with this case covering the same story, but they're kind of coming at it from different angles.
Exactly. We've got 24row.com and Aruba.eu, both from November 19th, 2024.
Okay.
So pretty recent stuff.
Yeah.
And they're both covering this whole thing, but it's like they're seeing different parts of the picture.
Right.
Which is what we're going to try to piece together today.
Absolutely. Get the full picture.
So rewind back to August 19th, 2023. That's when this whole thing starts. Officer Phillips, he's driving a police car, right? On duty. And, well, he had a little too much to drink.
Oh, boy.
Ends up hitting a parked car.
Not good.
Not good at all. And turns out, not only was he driving under the influence, but his driver's license had expired.
Oof, that's a rough start.
Yeah, not a good look for anyone, let alone a police officer. Right?
Definitely not. But to be fair, it sounds like he did face some consequences for his actions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so on October 5th, 2023, he was convicted, had to pay a fine, and even got what they call a conditional driving ban.
Conditional driving ban, what's that?
So basically it means he could only drive under very specific circumstances.
Like what kind of circumstance?
Potentially for work, maybe if he had to get to and from the station or something, or maybe if he had one of those alcohol monitoring devices installed in his car.
I see.
Stuff like that. And here's where things get a little messy.
Okay, here comes the twist.
The minister, Rako Chaijan, he didn't just stop at the drunk driving.
You mean there was more?
Oh, there was more.
What else did they throw at him?
Well, Chaijan went on to accuse Phillips of a whole bunch of other things, basically saying he'd been careless with his police equipment.
Like, what are we talking about here?
Like missing bullet from his gun.
Seriously?
Lending out his handcuffs.
Who's he lending his handcuffs to?
Apparently another colleague.
Okay.
He even had, get this, an unauthorized baton.
An unauthorized baton? What, like he just picked one up at the store or something?
Well, we don't know the details, but it was definitely not standard issue.
So they're basically piling on all these accusations on top of the drunk driving.
Exactly.
Wow, that's rough. Did he even try to defend himself?
Oh, absolutely. He fought back, arguing that, well, yeah, he did have a few drinks that night. The accident, he claims, it happened because he swerved to avoid hitting a dog.
Oh, interesting.
Not because he was intoxicated.
Okay, so he's saying it wasn't just the alcohol that caused the accident?
Yeah. Right. Now, what about that expired license and all that missing gear? He had answers for those, too.
Lay it on me.
Well, for the license, he basically said, look, I just didn't realize it had expired, but I've already renewed it.
Okay, fair enough, I guess. But what about all that missing stuff? That's harder to explain away, right?
He claimed he was just overwhelmed when his colleagues took all his gear after the incident,
So it's their fault.
Well, not exactly. He said later on he found his badge, the one that was missing, and the handcuffs. Well, he said he lent those to a colleague during Carnival.
During Carnival?
Yeah, apparently things get a little crazy during Carnival, lots of crowds and stuff.
Right, right.
So he said, look, I needed an extra pair of hands, so to speak.
Okay, I'll give him that one. But what about the unauthorized baton? That sounds a little fishy.
Well, his explanation for that was pretty simple. He said it was just sitting on his desk.
Just sitting there, huh?
Yep. So, series of unfortunate events and miscommunications.
At least according to him. But it doesn't sound like the minister was buying any of it.
No.
And to make matters worse, he brings up this whole thing about Phillips owning a security company.
Since 2009.
Since 2009. Wait, so he's a cop and running a security company on the side?
That seems to be the case.
Isn't that like a conflict of interest?
That's what the minister was arguing. He said, look, this looks bad.
Yeah.
It looks like he's abusing his power as a police officer.
Right.
And it could really hurt the public's trust in the entire police force.
Wow, so they're basically saying this guy's dirty.
In a nutshell, yeah. And the minister was convinced that all of this, plus the drunk driving incident, it was enough to get Phillips kicked off the force for good.
Wow, so the stakes just got real high.
Oh, yeah.
So does he just give up and walk away?
Not this guy. He takes the whole thing to court.
Oh, really? So what happened in court?
That's where it gets really interesting.
I'm all ears.
Because remember, by this point, He's already served his time for the drunk driving.
Right. Paid his fines and everything.
It-
So what's left to argue about?
Well, the court, they actually agreed that that initial 6-week suspension, that was fair.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But get this, they weren't buying the minister's reason for extending the suspension for another 6 weeks.
You mean the idea that they needed more time to investigate?
Exactly.
But why wouldn't the court just, look at the evidence themselves?
You'd think, right. And that's basically what they said.
Like, come on, guys, get your act together.
Pretty much. They pointed out that Phillips's criminal sentence, it was already finalized.
Yeah.
Back on November 27th, 2023.
That's almost a year before this whole court thing even happened.
Exactly. So the court's thinking was, look, there's no reason to believe there's anything hidden in that file that's going to suddenly justify keeping this guy suspended.
So they're basically calling the minister out for stalling.
Yeah, and they also didn't like that the disciplinary process had been dragging on for over a year already.
Right. I mean, that's a long time to have this hanging over your head.
Absolutely. It can really mess with someone's life, even if they end up being cleared of everything.
Totally. So the court's really looking out for Phillips here.
Yeah, and to emphasize their point, they brought up the fact that he'd already returned all of his police equipment.
Oh, right. All that missing stuff.
Yeah, so he's showing that he's willing to cooperate,
Okay.
And remember that whole issue with the security company?
Yeah.
Turns out it was never even active.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Never actually operated.
So the minister's big argument about the conflict of interest?
It kind of fell apart.
Wow, this just keeps getting more and more complicated.
You said it.
Stay tuned, folks, because it sounds like this deep dive is about to take another turn. So it sounds like the minister's argument, it wasn't as strong as he thought it was.
Yeah, it seems like he might have overestimated his case a bit.
Did the article say anything about what his legal team was trying to do?